Hello everyone. Today I'd like to give an introduction to the mandolin method of Silvio Ranieri and explain why I think this is one of the best methods for classical mandolin. Maybe first a few words about the several editions that exist, because there is a little bit of confusion about that. When you look on internet, you often see this method described as being in two parts, and actually it is in two parts, but the first publication in 1925, it was published in 4 books, which means that the first part is 2 books and the second part is also 2 books. So this, for instance, is the second book, and at the end of the second book, this is page 82, you see end of the first part. So this is only half of the method. So then you have book 3 and 4, and book 3 and 4 is the second part. So this is book 4, and then you see at the end, and this is another 87 pages, end of the second part. So now the problem is that in later editions, like in 1949, they look like this. Again, you have the books that are numbered, but you only have 2 books, and you could call this part 1 and part 2, but part 1 and part 2 is actually only part 1, because these are the first 2 books from the older edition. They changed at the end, of course. You still see end of the second part and end of the first part, but you see end of the first part, we are here at page 47, and the second part is page 63. So there is much less material in this edition than in the first edition. This is still a more recent, I think this is from 1956. So this is the same thing. You have book 1 and you have book 2, and this is only half of the original method. So I think these are still available. Something like this, very similar, or maybe with a green cover and even with a totally new cover, you can find those on internet. So that's the first part and second part, or the first book and the second book. Now if you want the third and the fourth book, which are much more difficult, you can find them on internet. There is a site, IMSLP. I will put a link in the description, and there you can find a scanned version of it. So what is this method really all about? Ranieri intended these books to be a tool for mandolin teachers to use with their pupils, to teach mandolin, and to have guidelines and a collection of excellent music and exercises. And this goes from very easy exercises for the beginning student up until very difficult pieces at the end. These books are not really meant for people who just want to study mandolin on their own without a teacher. You can still read everything and have some good recommendations and guidelines, but still you will be missing the example. You cannot really see how it's done, and that of course is the case with any method for any instrument. Music is a language, and it is a part of it is a tradition which you have to see and hear and feel, and this can impossibly be in just a book in written words. In this case you would use another language or 2 languages. One is the text, and the other languages are the music notes, but both of these are just a fraction of what music is. And just like children who learn their mother's language, to start with, they are not going to show children, well, that's how it's written, and no, of course not. They will first talk to the children and they will imitate. And that is what works best. To learn a language and to learn music, you have to hear what the music is and you have to see how it's done. Because with the voice, when we talk, you cannot see the voice, of course. You cannot really see how it's done. So you have to try and see how you produce a sound. With a musical instrument, you have the technical abilities that you need, but instead of just explaining how it's done, you have to show how it's done, and you have to show what it looks like when it's done right. So that is what I would like to show you with this method. So how I experienced it from the beginning and going through the whole method, and also having my teacher showing me how it was done. Because as a child I didn't read these texts, and I didn't need to, because my teacher was there and he explained how I should hold the plectrum, how I should hold the mandolin, which fingers to use and how everything was done. So that's mainly why I would like to make these videos, because those are the things that are not in the book, and this has been passed on as a tradition. So from Ranieri to his pupils, people that played with him, like Frans de Groot, who played in my orchestra and who played in a quartet with the conductor of my orchestra, and he was my teacher. And this is all how it is connected and how this tradition is passed on, because they knew the people they saw. My second teacher had been to concerts of Ranieri. He saw him play. He knew what it sounded like and what it looked like when he played. So that is really very important information, which is impossible to put in a book. I think over the years, one of the things that has been very important to me is not to be limited in any way when you play mandolin. So in a technical way, if you read something in a method and they say it has to be done that way, and you try to do it that way, and that will be a general guideline. But of course in music, in real music, it will be full of exceptions, and you will have certain at times you will see that how it is normally done doesn't work, and you have to find a solution for it. And in that way, I think you have to be as free and open-minded as possible and see what creates the sound you want and how you can play what the music intends to be played, or what the composer intended. I've been following this method, and my second teacher, most of the time when he explained how something was done, he explained very little technical details to me. The most important thing for him was the musicality and how it should sound, and he really didn't care how I did it. It was only the result that was important. So I learned to find solutions for some problems in several music pieces, and I think that is what everyone should do, because it will not be the same for everyone. It will be a little different. You don't have exactly the same hands, and you will feel it a little differently, and you will have to look for a solution at certain times to be able to play something. The standard techniques which will be applied in most cases. Just later on you will see that you will find that there are exceptions, and you will have to do certain things differently in order to get the result you want. But so in the beginning, to learn just the standard techniques it's very important to practice, because not only knowing how it should be done or having seen how someone does it doesn't mean you can do it. Your hands need to practice, so you have to play a lot, and you have to get used to the feeling, and you really have to master the basic techniques, so you don't have to think about them anymore, so it just goes automatically. The mandolin, the plectrum, it should become a part of your body. It should feel so familiar that nothing is strange. This is just what you feel comfortable with, and the basic techniques should just be easy to do. So, and that can only be obtained by doing them right in the right way, and then practice a lot and play a lot. So let's have a look at the plectrums. Ranieri recommends the shapes, either the Neapolitan one like this, they exist in so many sizes and thicknesses, or the Roman plectrums with the 2 points, and also they exist in larger, smaller, thinner, thicker. These are very thick ones. And then the material that is mentioned here in the method is tortoiseshell. Of course, nowadays you cannot really justify the use of tortoiseshell anymore, especially not new tortoiseshell. But over the years, so many of these plectrums have been produced, and I think it's still possible to find old plectrums. You often find them with old mandolins in cases, and they can still be used. They can be reshaped as you want to have them, and they can still be useful. Why not? If the plectrum already exists, you are not hurting anyone. The other option, of course, is to use a different material, and what I prefer, if I didn't have tortoiseshell, I would prefer celluloid, which is very often used. And for instance, these plectrums produced by Galli, they exist. This is the shape. Well, they have different shapes. This is what I think is about the best shape for mandolin playing, and they exist in light, medium and heavy, thin, medium and heavy. So 0.5 millimeter, 0.7 millimeter and 1 millimeter. I think if you use that as a reference, then I would say the 0.5 millimeter is very flexible, and it can be useful to start learning tremolo, because if you use this plectrum and your pulse is not really flexible yet, then the plectrum, the flexibility of the plectrum will solve a part of the problem. Then once you can tremolo quite well, you can use a thicker plectrum, 0.7 over millimeter, even 1 millimeter, and that will produce a fuller sound and also more volume of sound. Of course, plectrums, I could talk an hour about plectrums, so I will have to make a new video specifically about plectrums, because there is a lot to be said about plectrums and the use and the shapes and the sound they produce. So I will keep that for next video. For now, next thing is the mandolin, the instrument. As I said, Ranieri shows an Hamburger mandolin in his method. He shows a number 3 orchestral type. Here he's holding a 5 bis model. That's what he preferred, and they are of course excellent mandolins, and I'm very fond of them too. But you can use this method to play any type of classical mandolin, of course. Even if you don't have a classical mandolin, you can still use the method and use the exercises to play. What Ranieri doesn't talk about in this method are strings. Probably because in those days there was not so much choice in different strings. Everyone was using the normal traditional strings. Today there are so many possibilities, so many different types of strings, so that's why I would say would like to say a few words about them. For a traditional classical Italian mandolin, the strings are all steel strings, of which the E and A are plain steel and the D and G are round wound steel strings. So the windings on the D and G string, they were wound with a round wire. So where today we also have strings that are wound with a flat wire, or we have strings that are wound with round wire and then polished, so they are flattened a little bit, and that makes a different sound. So you see on these mandolins I have a set of round wound strings, and these are silver plated, and of course you can hear they are not really smooth. You can feel the windings on those, and it may be a little difficult to play, but this produces a different sound than the flat wound strings or the polished strings. The polished strings are something in between. The sound is much more clear than the flat wound strings, but it's not as clear as this. So this is what I prefer. You can use any type of strings on your instrument according to what you want it to sound like, but this is what was traditionally used, and this is the kind of string I prefer. So even if you find a set of round wound strings, you still have to be careful to buy a suitable set, because several of them are really designed for other types of mandolins, like the American mandolins, which have a lot more tension in the strings, and that doesn't work on an Italian classical mandolin. So I think I will have to make another video about strings, because that's another subject that is so where there is so much information and so much to tell and to compare. So just for now, I would like to show a few sets of strings which I think are really excellent for classical Italian mandolins. One is from Optima, and this is really the cheapest set you can get from Optima. It's the set 2145. They're called silver strings. So these are just plain steel wound with silver plated round wire. And the tension on an Hamburger mandolin or Calace mandolin, any other type of classical Italian mandolin, is really excellent. Intonation is very good, so this is really good set of strings. The other possibility is from Savares, the Argentine set. They have one set 1540. It's actually this one is 1540, and this one is 1540X, and the X is the stainless steel version. So the advantage of this set of string is that your A and E string are made of stainless steel, so you have no oxidation if you have humid hands or you transpire a lot, then this might be useful. I don't really use these because the stainless steel is much harder than the normal steel, and they wear the frets much more easily, and I have very dry hands, so I really have no reason to use stainless steel. But so these are really recommended. These are very good. The tension is very good, the intonation is very good. So the Argentine 1540 sets, and then the Optima 2145 set silver strings. Now, before we start playing, two things are really important. First thing, how to hold the plectrum, And second thing, how to hold the mandolin. Let's start with a plectrum. You hold the plectrum between the forefinger and the thumb, and the other three fingers are just loose and without pressing them against the forefinger. What is important is to have the forefinger curved and the thumb stretched, or more or less stretched, certainly not like this. I'll show you a little closer. So in close-up it looks like this. With the forefinger curved and the thumb more or less stretched. This is in order to avoid pressure on the plectrum. If you don't stretch the thumb, if you hold it like this, you start putting pressure on the plectrum and then you lose flexibility. So like this, the plectrum remains free and flexible. The other fingers should be free. They can touch or not touch, but certainly not put pressure on the forefinger. So this is the basic way of holding the plectrum. Now we have to find a comfortable and relaxed way to hold the mandolin. Let's start with the left hand, left arm. Just if you hold it relaxed and you lift your arm about this height, this is actually just perfect to hold the mandolin here. You put the mandolin here, and why did I lift it up till there? Because now I have easily access to the full fingerboard. If I hold the mandolin like this, it becomes much more difficult to play here. You can just here play in first position maybe, but then if you go down it becomes more difficult. This is much more easy if the mandolin is a little more vertical this way. So this is very easy to hold the mandolin here. Now we have to find the right position for the right arm and hand. It's really important to play the strings with the flat side of the plectrum. So the plectrum should always be parallel to the strings. And now if we look at this hand and this arm, you just hold it in a natural way, so not like this, not like that, just as it naturally is. And if I lift it, you see that the angle of the plectrum changes. So if we hold the mandolin here and we just put the hand in place, then actually the position of the plectrum is not ideal, because it should be more like that. If I hold it really parallel to the strings, then I have to play like this, which is not comfortable. So ideally, if I lift the mandolin a little bit, then I get in the right position. Now my plectrum is parallel to the strings. So the only thing is I have no support here. So that's why you see many mandolin players play like this. They cross the legs and now you have the support here. So you can hold it easily like this and with the left hand here. So again, for the left arm, the mandolin should be a little bit tilted this way, because if you hold it like that, then you get tension here, and if it's too far, so just use the length of your forearm here, that's about what you need. So the mandolin should be slightly like this. Here the right arm will come approximately here, at a little bit at the left side of the tailpiece. This way you see your thumb will be parallel to the G string and this is a good starting point. So again, it's really important to always play with the flat side of the plectrum, so the plectrum always parallel to the strings. This produces the best sound. As soon as you have the plectrum and you keep it not parallel, more like this, you are going to scratch the strings by with the side of the plectrum. Then something else about left hand, maybe a close-up to see what's on this side of the left hand. So in detail for the left hand, just hold it as it falls naturally, with the fingers in the direction of the fingerboard. There is no need to do this. This is rather used for instruments with a larger fingerboard like guitar and lute. So if you have a narrow fingerboard like this, it's really easy to play like this, and you can easily play every string with every finger. Then the thumb should be approximately between the first and the second fret, and at the back of the neck of the mandolin you should always leave this space between your hand and the neck of the mandolin, so not hold it like that. Of course, in some cases when you really have a difficult chord to play or something like that, it might be necessary to do just this for a little moment, but in general you will hold the mandolin like this and always have this space between your hand and the neck of the mandolin. So with both hands in this position, it's really comfortable for the left hand to play all over the fingerboard and for the plectrum to play parallel with the strings. When you start playing mandolin, the very first technique you should learn is tremolo. It may seem not the easiest thing to start with, but it's actually better to invest some time in the beginning to learn it properly, so you can play a tremolo easily and relaxed without tension, and further on you can use it anytime you need it. Because if you start playing without tremolo, then you will learn to play some music and you might avoid using tremolo afterwards, because you can always play a piece without tremolo, even if it should be tremolo some parts of the music. You think, oh, I can play it without, because you don't really master the tremolo. So it's better to invest some time in the beginning and really learn the tremolo as you should do it, so it becomes easy and you can use it anytime you need it. So it is important to be always relaxed, have a relaxed arm, wrist. The movement of the tremolo should come from the wrist, not from the arm. So the plectrum, you have to hold it also loosely, so it can move a little bit. You hold it perpendicular to the strings, and so when you make a downstroke or an upstroke, you touch both strings each time. So this is slowly the movement, and you see when I do it really slowly, when I touch the strings the plectrum will move, and when I go back the plectrum also moves. And that's the flexibility you need, because if it doesn't move, you have no flexibility and it will become very difficult to make a tremolo. You just speed up and gradually if you do it right, it should require no effort whatsoever. It should be really relaxed, and you can play tremolo half an hour like this without any problem. There is no tension anywhere. You just make a very flexible movement like that, which is really easy. The only thing you have to learn is when you touch the strings, of course you feel the strings, and that's a feeling that should become comfortable. I see many people play with a full forearm tremolo like that, and it doesn't sound flexible. You hear each plectrum stroke. The purpose of a tremolo is to make a sustained note and not to hear every plectrum stroke. So if you use a full arm, then you really hear tak 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 tak. You hear every note, and when you use a flexible wrist, it sounds really different. So other than that, there is only one big secret to tremolo, and that is practice. Practice, practice, and practice again. If you just start playing, it will require many hours practicing until you feel really comfortable with it. In the Ranieri method, there are some good exercises in the very beginning of the book, and I will play now number 9. This is number 9 from the first book of the Ranieri method. It's a tremolo exercise, a C major scale in long tremolo notes, and it's actually a mandolin duet. So I recorded the second part, and I'm now going to play the first part together with the second part. So that's it for now. See you in the next video.